Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the episode 20 of Take It Easy podcast 20. In today's episode we have Andrew Till of the Mr. EV fame, who's recently completed a very, very long trip, and he's going to talk about that and some other things. Enjoy. So Andrew, welcome to Take It Easy.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
I'm sure. Well, you're more of more fame than I am. So,
well, but I don't know about that.
How about
I think people know you from your Twitter comments and tirades and things, don't they? Do you have tirades? You have a few tirades here and there.
Of course. But the so I'll briefly introduce you in case somebody doesn't know who you are. But in short, you're a Mr. EV. I should have actually said that at the end. I'm not a very good radio broadcaster. But you've been driving EVs for a while. You've been around for a while. You have opinions. You've got a very popular YouTube channel where you're going through all sorts of EV related subjects. You're running at least one website that I know of with EV related content. So Andrew, well, how about you introduce yourself then, and you tell us who you are and you plug yourself in.
Right, yeah. Gosh, where do I begin? Okay, so my name's Andrew then, as Greg said. I'm Mr. EV, I suppose is my stage name, as my wife calls it. What about I've been doing this whole EV thing for a while. I'm a bit of an EV nut. I'm passionate about electric cars and electric vehicles and just anything that's renewable and good. And so my channel is all about that. And it's we get up to some japes and we have some fun. And now my wife is on the videos as well. And in fact, everyone just wants to see her more than me. But so if you haven't seen them already, do check out my YouTube channel. And
I'll plug it in the description.
Great. Okay.
As they say on YouTube, which spoiler alert, podcasts don't have a description down below, but I'll put it in the show notes.
Great.
Before I go on, the one thing that I've been trying to fix, even though I'm a white middle-aged bloke, is women basically in EV content. And like I say, that's probably why people want to see your wife, because women are usually not the sort of people who seem to have YouTube channels about EVs. Although that actually is changing more and more, and hopefully there's more. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And plus, if nobody's seen, I'm trying to like if you haven't seen Andrew's channel, go and watch it, because his wife is crackers. Like it's
she has so we have quite a good equilibrium, I think, between us, because I'm quite diplomatic, I would say, and that also means that I'm not very good at making up my mind, and she is far less diplomatic and far better at knowing what she wants, what she likes and what she doesn't like. So that creates a little bit of tension, I suppose, on our videos, and it's fun to watch. People seem to enjoy watching it. So the biggest of our videos has been the Tesla Model 3 versus the Kia E-Niro. And she is not a big Tesla fan, or no, she's a fan of Tesla actually, but not a fan of the Model 3. So, and a lot of people either agree with me or agree with her, and it creates for interesting viewing.
It is certainly interesting. I do highly recommend watching that, and the trip to Italy is the other good one, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Although the strange thing about that one is that she didn't know that I was doing all of this Mr. EV stuff at the time. So that's so I was trying to be quite sneaky about it, and I was just sneaking off into the car and doing these videos. She didn't have a clue what I was doing, where I was going, but. From now on, of course, any trips we do are going to be on YouTube, and that's going to be quite fun, I think. We were going to be doing one this year, of course. We were going to be doing Italy, I think, probably this year, but then, of course, Corona happened, and hopefully next year.
Let's not talk about the Rona.
No, we won't.
So because we were we were recording towards the end of October, but we were supposed to be recording earlier. So first of all, I would like to wish you happy birthday officially on the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're now in the age of wisdom.
Yes, so they say. Yeah, doesn't feel like it.
No, it isn't until you get 42. To 42.
Okay, that's
the age I am. If you haven't noticed,
I didn't know you were 42, but that's the life, the universe, and everything, isn't it? That's
exactly.
The
that's what I was trying to say. So you've done recently a trip, a pretty long trip for your birthday or pre-birthday trip, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants to talk to you about it, but it was one of those trips that I wouldn't say everyone wants to do, but it's like an iconic trip, from a one extremity of the in this case the geographical extremity to the other, which is from Cornwall to Scotland, basically.
Yeah.
From one edge of Cornwall to another edge of Scotland. How did it go?
Yeah, so the Land's End John O'Groats trip, that's what everyone seems to want to do, whether they're cycling or walking or whatever crazy idea they've got, that's what you do. And I didn't know at the time, actually, but it's called Le Jog. Le Jog.
Oh. Oh,
so so that's what I call it now.
So you've achieved that.
So I've achieved Le Jog. I'm not sure whether you're supposed to say it with a French accent because that makes no sense, but it sounds good to me. Le Jog. So so I did that, and I went from Canterbury to Land's End to John O'Groats, back to Canterbury again. The idea was to do it in 3 days, and the reason I did it in the first place was because some chaps did it in a Model 3, and they did it in a very, very fast time, and I wanted to show that it could be done in a normal car, a normal EV, sorry, and not just a Tesla, because everyone kind of knows by now, I think, that Teslas have a very good charging network and they're fast to charge, all the rest of it. But people still seem to think that nobody else has that. No one else has a good charging network, or if you have anything other than a Tesla, you just can't do it. And I still get comments, or I still enter into Twitter arguments with people where they believe that to be the case. And so I just wanted this to be a way of saying, look, you can do it, and actually it's easy. Of course, I didn't know at the time it was going to be easy, and I was pleasantly surprised. So
there was no dramas, basically.
No dramas. No dramas at all, which is going to make for 3 very boring videos when I finally get them edited. But no, so spoiler alert, it was absolutely fine. The only issues we had were Ionity being on free vend. And a couple of, that's actually a good thing because it meant that I didn't have to pay much money, but it was on free vend for a reason, and the reason was a couple of the units weren't working, and it was going at slower charge speed than it should have been. So with that was actually a problem. I would have rather gone to another charger. I would have rather go anywhere else, in fact, Instavolt or Polar or whatever, and had a reliable slower charge, even if it would have cost more money. So that was one issue, but really that's not a bad thing, is it? It just, the only reason it really affected me was because I was trying to do it in such a short period of time. So I needed to do Land's End to John O'Groats in 1 day to get enough sleep to be able to get back the next and that kind of thing. So, but that was the only issue. Charge Place Scotland were all good. Two of the chargers didn't work on the first go. I had to wave my card a couple of times, but those were very small things. I didn't once have an issue where someone else was occupying a charger. I didn't once have an issue where a charger was completely broken. So I did 16 charges altogether, which was actually more than I needed to, but 16 charges, and it was absolutely fine.
Was that the 16 charges altogether within 3 days, or is it? Was it the Le Jog?
No. So Le Jog was fewer than that. Yeah, Le Jog must have been about 10. I would have said.
Okay, that's not too bad.
I think I should have that information in front of me, and I don't. But it was about something like that. Yeah.
I think there's a big misconception with Teslas and the charging network, because obviously Tesla is an American company, and this is just my opinion. Obviously, like completely, I've driven Tesla many times, but I've never owned one. But the connector is different in America, so they they actually have to rely on the Tesla-specific network in America much more than they do in Europe. In Europe, the Model S and X have Type 2, and Model 3 and in the future Y will have CCS. So you can plug yourself easily into any public charger. Whereas in America, if you turn up to a charger that could be used by other EVs, you can't use Tesla without an adapter. So I think that changes the usability and kind of user patterns, if you like, if you're a Tesla owner versus other cars. And I think that's where this sort of great divide between the Tesla owners and other EV owners stems from. But that's just my wild opinion.
Could be. I think there are a few reasons for that. That's a good one. I have not thought of that before. And especially I'm sure loads of people that watch your videos are probably not from Europe or UK, so they, I'm sure you've got viewers from America, and the point of view is valid for them, but I think that's where they missed the point, or I think Tesla's kind of went, I don't know why they went the way where they went. I'm sure there was a historical reason, but I'm sure that if they could turn back the time, I could play the song in the background. I'm sure they would have probably gone with CCS if they launched Model S now from scratch, because that's probably that would be probably a better bet. But that's just my opinion. Who knows why? Who knows why they did what they did? Get them on the line.
This is what some podcasts can do, like the third row. But I can't do that. What was the? I had another point that just escaped me, and this is typical. I go on a rant, and then I have to pause the recording, remind myself what I was talking about.
Well, in the meantime, if you do get Elon Musk on the line, I want to find out why I can't get solar tiles over here just yet.
Well, there's other companies doing it in the UK.
There was a good video about it, wasn't there, on Fully Charged recently?
Yeah. I have at least one friend. Hi, John. Who might be interested in that. So. He asked me actually afterwards because I posted a link to it, because I was surprised, and it just seems like such a simple idea. You've got a concrete tile, and you just drill a little hole in it in the shape of the solar panel. Stick the solar panel in it, cover it with some paint. Bob's your uncle. Yeah. Seems like a very simple thing to do and no brainer, really.
It is.
But anyway. So my other thought about the and again, this is. I don't own a Tesla, but I don't think the Tesla charging network is as good in the UK as kind of people expect it to be. Like if you own a Model 3, especially in the UK, you can't just solely rely on the Tesla superchargers. Whereas in the US, when you do interstates and you travel vast distances, I think you are more likely, or you have to. Otherwise, you have to plug yourself into a user connector. But you pretty much have to rely on the Tesla network to be able to do that. But that's just, maybe it's changed nowadays with Model 3. But I just seem to remember when I was driving Model S a while ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, that I was quite disappointed how many times I had to use third-party networks and CHAdeMO adapter.
That's interesting. Okay, so yeah, because I hired a Model 3 recently, but I only went to a supercharger once. To be honest, the battery was so big and I didn't do enough long trips with it to deplete it really. So I only went to the charger, I think, just to test it really. And when I had a Model S for a couple of days a while back, again I just went to one supercharger. So I kind of found that the range was so good on both of them, I didn't end up needing to use any network really other than the Tesla one, and I found it was super slick and I absolutely loved it. And that was my favorite thing, to be honest. So the Model S kind of left me a bit cold. I wasn't a big fan of that. I found it a very big car, which I didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy driving it as much as I should have, I think, because driving around country lanes in a car that wide was just not pleasurable. I was worried about scratching the damn thing all the time. So the Model 3, I found that a much nicer drive, and not, to be honest, not that dissimilar to the Niro in terms of the feel of it. Obviously it's a bit sportier and everything, but I kind of like them both equally really to drive. It wasn't the performance one, so obviously if I had the performance one, that would be different, I think.
Yeah. Well, I test drove Model S. We had Model S actually, in fact, last time from no longer existing Polar Experience or EV Experience program, where you basically, when you're paying your Polar subscription, depending on the point, you could it was possible to bid on a car, and you could win Model S, for instance, for a week, or other EV for a week. So we had Model S for a week from that, and we went to Lake District, which is a delightful place where there's loads of narrow lanes and tiny roads. And I actually, because I like driving all sorts of things, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually did enjoy the fact that car seemed big, but I could still squeeze through countryside lanes, and actually enjoyed the challenge of, having to plan. I enjoy that. It's kind of my brain kind of works in mysterious ways that way. And what the other thing that I enjoyed, and that I don't think you can do any other EV at the moment. I mean, I haven't driven I-Pace or other kind of performance EVs, but I enjoyed the fact that on windy lanes where I could see well ahead, if I had a couple of cars ahead of me, I could step on it and actually overtake them rather rapidly. I probably spoke about it before on the podcast, but I always had some... there's no other way to put it, but just stupid people in Audis, because it would be usually Audi, just trying to chase me up and literally endanger themselves because they saw me doing it. It was just, it was painful to watch. And they would then they would sit on my tail, because I generally drive... I don't drive slow, but I don't speed too much. Yeah. Or not at all, anyway. But they would, obviously, they wanted to race, so, they would just sit then on my tail. And it's always sad when somebody sits on your tail and then you step on it when you're in a zone where you could. And they chase you up, and then they sit on your tail, and you're like, oh, just go away. So that was the aspect of Model S that I enjoyed. What I didn't like, and my wife was disappointed about that as well, was the quality of it, of the interior especially. The creaks that you can hear when you're going around the bends and stuff. It just, for a car that probably was 80,000-90,000 pounds new, you just didn't expect the whole dash to creak. Yeah, that just didn't sound quality.
It was I remember the button. I think it was the buttons on the steering wheel or something that I really found quite tacky. I thought, like far worse than the Kia, for instance. And yes, for an 80 grand car or whatever it was, the one that I hired, I was surprised. I was surprised by that. But I imagine it's better now. It was quite an old one that I hired.
Yeah, I think Model 3 is supposed to be better, but. Who knows?
Yeah, that felt quite solid. I thought I didn't have a problem with that. Yeah. Okay.
It's interesting about the range of, because we both own Kia E-Niro with the same powertrain. I believe. There's differences in the like interior, but that doesn't matter. It's a very, very efficient car. It has to be said. Even when you step on it.
Yeah, it is. So that's the thing that really surprised me, actually, doing this Le Jog trip, is that on the way going from Canterbury to Land's End, for the first half of it, I was still getting 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour, which is astonishingly good, I thought, for motorway driving. And that dipped. So by the time I got to Land's End, that was down to something like 3.8, I think it was, or something like that. But even that was pretty good, I thought. It's far better than I expected. Yeah.
I don't think I get that well, because you must be a very careful driver. I get
you've got quite a heavy right foot. I think we've established that.
Yeah. Well, I like to accelerate faster. It's not that I speed or anything like that. It's just I like to just.
You like to get up dynamic. To the. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And I tend to be more zen, perhaps, while I'm driving.
Yeah. I tend to be zen when I drive on the long drives. So interestingly enough, I went to. I'll get back to you in a second, but since we're talking about the ranges and Tesla, I thought I'll mention. We went on a short holiday to Norfolk the other day, which was actually my first time over there. Speaking of which, actually, I'm going to ask you a question in a second. Remind me about being in places in the UK, because I couldn't believe when I found out. Anyway. So it was my first time in that part of the country. Going there, and was absolutely no problem for Kia E-Niro. We had to stop basically because we just had to stop and move as humans. And I've bumped into somebody from Maidstone in one of the towns. I think the town is called Cromer. He was trying to charge his Model 3 Performance Dual blah 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 at one of the destination chargers in that town, and couldn't figure out an app, which is one of those networks where you have to go, you really have to use their website, and it's just not the best experience. Anyway, we just got talking because I like talking to people, and he said he's from Maidstone and is just visiting his kids in that area. And he said, then he said to me, "Oh, I have to be home at 7," and I think it was like something like 4 o'clock. But he said, "I'm not going to make it because I'll probably need to stop and charge on the way." And that's the long-range performance Model 3, about to do about 190 miles. And I was astonished because granted, on our way back from Norfolk, we set off with 100%, thanks to a charger at one of the parks. We got home with about 30% or 28%, only because I was, driving a bit dynamically along the way. But we had plenty of range, to go around and do whatever next day. And I was astonished that somebody with a car that can do 300 plus miles on a charge, allegedly, was worried about getting to Maidstone, which isn't much further from where I am. I just don't know why. So I wonder whether Model 3, when you step on it, is much less efficient. And maybe just because, in Kias we don't have as much power, we still think it's efficient when you step on it, but maybe Model 3 performance is actually a power hog when you actually drive it dynamically. So I presume that guy, he didn't look like he drives carefully, basically, is what I'm going to say. And he was much older than me, but you can tell that he's been, he enjoys these things. I don't know, what is your opinion on that?
When I just remember when I had the Model 3, and I input the destination as the charger in Maidstone, funnily enough, and I found that it was far better efficiency than it predicted. So it said, I can't remember now, but it said I would get there with a certain amount of battery, and it was actually far better than that. And that was with me enjoying it, I would say, on the motorway, keeping to the speed, but still, I was enjoying the power that it had. But that wasn't a performance. So yes, perhaps that makes a difference. And the only other thing I can think of is if this person, had they just got the Tesla? Had they recently got it and they had a little bit of range anxiety? Perhaps.
I think he was charged by the time we got back to the charger, he was unplugging. So, we timed it perfectly, and he said to me that he got to 100%. Because that particular charger can do 22 kilowatts, so it's a 3-phase charger, and his car could do 11 kilowatts charging, whereas my Kia E-Niro can only do 7. Can only do 7 single phase.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to 100%, obviously. I don't know. If you're listening, I didn't actually plug him the podcast because I didn't want to scare him away. I was talking already enough. And trying to help him. In fact, I think he only charged at that charger because I helped him and actually showed him that it is possible, because he has an iPhone just like I do. He was using the website in the same way I did, but for some reason for him it didn't work. It turned out that actually you need to have location services enabled for Safari, for the browser, and he's disabled it. And the website did not give him any indication whatsoever that is the problem. So it was just, it's not the greatest website on earth, basically. I mean, it's still better than some other apps, but it was anyway. I'm not going to mention the network.
These destination chargers, they can be pretty awful. We've got a whole load around Canterbury, and it's just very clumsy.
Yeah. Anyway, so Kia E-Niro is not your first EV, right?
So the first one was a Nissan Leaf, the 24 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf, which I loved, absolutely loved that car. And when did I? Oh God, it's years now, isn't it? I've had the Niro almost 2 years, so we have to change that in April. So we had the Leaf before that. I bought it second hand for £10,000. It was worth about 12.5, I think, by the time I had sold it. It was the only car I've had that appreciated in value, and it was wonderful. I loved it. Yeah, and that got me well into. I mean, I wasn't obsessed with EVs or anything, but I was already certainly EV curious by the time I got the Nissan Leaf. I thought that the Model 3 was going to be the car that I would want, and so I had put a deposit down on that. But we just waited until we'd moved to a place with a driveway, and then at that moment we decided to get the EV. And I thought, well, might as well get the Leaf in the meantime. And yeah, I haven't looked back since.
How did you find a move from the Nissan Leaf to Kia E-Niro?
I think I preferred the seats of the Leaf. It's stupid. It's a stupid thing to focus on, but I preferred the seats in the Leaf, I think. And I think I prefer the interior a little bit, but my memory is very bad. And at the same time, I mean, the big thing about the Niro is that just once you go from a 24 kilowatt, well, you know this. But you had the 30. You had the 30, right? Not the 24.
I did, but trust me, it wasn't that much of a difference.
No, it wasn't. So, I mean, the difference is just astonishing. Apart from the fact you've got a far bigger battery to play with, the efficiency is better as well.
It is, yeah.
And as you know, it's like the Niro is just unbelievable, really. I still can't believe it. That's the thing. So after all these months of having it, apart from the fact I still smile every time I get in it, I still just can't believe the range. And that was just highlighted really by doing this trip that I did. And I can't believe it, how little I have to charge. Because I drive, my parents live in Dorset, and so I drove over there, and that's a long way. So that was almost 3 hours of driving. And I still got there with something like 40% battery or something like that. I mean, that's just unheard of. I would have done 3 charges in the Leaf, I think, to get over there. So it's amazing. Yeah.
A Leaf is just not very efficient, sort of over 60 miles an hour. It's impossible to, I don't know why. I would love to actually, if I had more time to spend like with somebody who can describe this to me. What does, how does it, where is the difference? Like, because they're both using AC motors to prepare themselves. You'd think that the construction of it and the way it's driven, it's fairly simple, but I'm sure there's some small differences, and I would just love to know what they are.
I would as well. It just seems to be that the South Koreans really know their powertrains. They can really do something special with that, and they've. To be fair, of course, Nissan were pioneers. And despite the Leaf being a ground-up EV at the time, obviously powertrain efficiency means that things are better now than they were back then. The amazing thing, of course, is that Niro, you would think, is a less aerodynamic dynamic shape. You would think that because they also have hybrid engines. I don't think they do petrol and diesel, do they, with the Niro anymore? They do. Oh, okay.
Petrol, diesel, mild hybrids.
Okay.
Plug-in hybrids, self-charging hybrids, all hybrids.
So that's particularly impressive, the fact that that's not really a ground-up EV, and yet they can squeeze so much efficiency out of it, which is why I'm so excited about anything that Hyundai and Kia do from now on, because I think they've really got something special. Yeah,
well, the rumor is that they have something that is going to be purely EV platform from ground up. I agree about the seats in Kia E-Niro. I fiddle with the controls all the time to like adjust the because it's electric. I don't know if you have electric adjustment of the seats, but I fiddle with it all the time, which drives my wife mad. But I just enjoy the fact that I can just do a little tweak and then I'm like, now good. But yeah, there was something about Nissan Leaf seats that Kia didn't seem to be able to replicate. So I missed that. But for me, the move from Leaf to Kia was literally like a leap about 10 years in the future, because the Leaf interior, as nice as it was, and it was obviously purposely built EV, it didn't look as modern as the Kia. It wasn't as open and kind of airy. I just found it very sort of 2010.
Yeah. The thing is, I suppose that you've got an advantage in that you've got the newer Niro, so you've got the 4 trim, and I've got the first edition. The interior looks better in yours. You've got a kind of nice flat, when you've got a nice widescreen display, and it's kind of a flat kind of dash that goes across. That's a bit. It just doesn't look quite as good in mine, but so that helps. Yeah, but yes, that's the main thing. It's just you're driving around with this enormous battery, and it's just a wonderful kind of a safety net, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I do go 2 weeks without charging quite often, and that's doing a whatever it is, 24 hours a day, kind of 24 hours, 24 miles, a day, a school run.
Okay.
And yeah, and I find that it just goes on forever, and I love it.
It's the same. We bring our car to about 50-60%, and then it's put on Eco Plus mode on Zappi, just to get a bit of a trickle charging from the solar panels, and then, and that's it. That's just enough. Usually, I do about 5-6 miles a day just to go for a walk, pick up some shopping, and get a coffee, and whatever comes from solar basically covers it. It's only when we have to go on a longer trip that I stick it on, and even then, we have to really go on like a major trip. Like if we go to see our in-laws or anything else, I just don't bother, because, like you say, it's just way too efficient. You just have, if you get in the car and it says like 150 miles, I'm like, meh, whatever. Like, it can do it. You don't have to think about it at all. That's the other thing that's amazing from sitting in Leaf, where whenever Leaf got under to something like 30 miles of range, I would always have to think about like, I have to stick it on charge. Whereas in this, I'm just like, yeah, it'll be fine. And in fact, when it goes down to 30, that's quite. You think you still have plenty of range, but actually, that in battery percentage wise, that's actually not too much in a Kia E-Niro I found. That's when you get the battery warning, and in a Leaf you'd be laughing still, like you'd be.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just amazing. I'm like I say, I'm personally still smiling getting in the car, but I've had mine only for a couple of months now, so that's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about the Tesla smile and things like that. Well, I've still got a Kia smile, so and it is causing a lot of anguish, because I don't know what we're going to do in April. I don't know whether we're going to change it for another car, and frankly, I'm not sure I want to. So I might end up just getting the 4 Plus trim in Yacht Blue, but we'll see. I still have to talk to my wife about it and do a video about it. You were going to mention something about Norfolk, by the way.
Yes. Just going back to Kia for a second, the other thing that not annoyed me, like I loved actually about Niro was the amount of power it has compared to the Leaf. It has 200 and something brake horsepower, and it's just astonishing. Like again, that this is something that sometimes annoys other drivers when I overtake people, and I get those Audi and BMW drivers trying to tailgate me. It doesn't have exactly the Tesla speed, but it's Tesla acceleration, but it still has enough oomph to kind of put the smile on my face. And I think the Tesla smile, as people call it, or Tesla grin, I think that's just an EV grin, and Tesla has just been using it as a sort of marketing device, because whenever you go on a test drive with Tesla, they always trying to make you experience it and kind of underline the fact that it's a Tesla, and therefore, but all they're saying is basically it's electric. You get the instant torque.
Yeah, and in theory, all EVs should benefit. I think from what Tesla do. I mean, a lot of people I think that haven't driven an EV before probably do end up looking at Tesla first, because it's like iPhone and Android. I suppose you might. You see all the adverts for iPhone and things like that. You see people walking around with iPhones and all that. But then maybe you can't afford an iPhone, and maybe you decide that actually Android does most of the things fine, and Android works fine for you. So I feel like it might be the same, in that some people, they get in a Tesla, they go, wow, that's amazing. And then they find out actually there are cars that do much the same thing, and they're cheaper. And, there's a lot out there. And I imagine it's similar. Similar thing.
I do think that in the future, because of, just to be safer and to increase the range, loads of EVs will have artificially dampen acceleration, so that people don't get, because it happened to me quite a few times that I was very close to accelerating into an object behind me, basically at a rapid pace, because I just I was thinking about something else, or not checking what I was doing too much and not paying enough attention. And obviously, because I was paying enough attention, I caught myself. But if that makes sense. But if you can imagine a Joe Public who's distracted by 50 other things and can't really think about safety when they're driving as much as I do, the instant torque would not help them, or would not help many people. So I think it will either take a sort of giant sort of scandal, public scandal, or an accident for that to change, or manufacturers will just figure out, okay, well, we're going to make a small EV that is not going to have a great acceleration, not because it can't do it, but because we want to make it safer. But that's just my theory. We'll see what happens in the future, obviously. You
may get a situation where EVs get geofenced, and if you're in a city, the acceleration is dampened. Perhaps, and then once you're out of that, then it increases. I mean, you get so many cases of old people reversing into shops and things like that because they're not entirely with it. And I can imagine the same kind of thing happening quite easily in an EV. I mean, God, the i3 when we hired that recently, that goes like a rocket. I couldn't believe it. And I just noticed it far more than the Niro, and I don't know why, but it really goes like a rocket, and I could imagine some accidents happening with that. Just to finish up that subject, when you reverse in a petrol or diesel car, by the time it spins up the engine and you let go of the clutch or whatever, you're gonna click in your head that, okay, I'm going backwards. But in an EV, you stick it in reverse, and I actually haven't tested that in an E-Niro, but I know for a fact, because I tested it, my Nissan Leaf would go. I didn't go that fast, but it would go in theory as fast backwards as it would go forwards. Now, don't quote me on that, because I haven't gone like 60 miles an hour, but I've gone 30 miles an hour backwards, and I was scared for life. And it happened way too quick. And obviously it was on private road and all that jazz. I wouldn't do it on a public road. I was in an massive open place where I could turn, and I knew that I'm going to be fine, but it was still super scary. I mean, I do think that in that case, that's where the EVs that do have a very high regen come in useful, because if that kind of thing does start happening and you panic and you take your foot immediately, you'll take your foot off the accelerator. If you've got a lot of regen, if the level of regen is high, then you'll slow down fairly quickly. Perhaps not enough to avoid the bin behind you or whatever, but still, that helps, I think. So in something, again, like the i3, that you can do one pedal driving effectively or close to it. So that helps, I think.
I mean, you can do that in my Kia E-Niro as well. In fact, my flying instructor, because there's no electric airplane, so I can't, I've got a pilot's license, and from time to time I fly noisy big airplanes, and the guy who is the instructor in the group drove with me the other day, and he was very interested in Kia E-Niro, and he was actually quite impressed that I didn't have to step on the brake as much. So every time we would slow down, he would be like, "Did you do that with the brake?" And then at some point he would actually look at me and look at my feet and to see what I was doing, and he was quite impressed that the regen was so strong on E-Niro that I virtually didn't have to touch the brakes until I actually had to come to a full stop, which he was very, very impressed with. And he was like, "Oh yeah, we're definitely going to look into that car, because 280 miles, that's more than we need." And he's like, he's in his 60s. He's got, he doesn't drive far, just goes around and picks up his son and son-in-law and whatever. Like, it just doesn't, and obviously drives to airfields to fly the airplane. But he was quite impressed. And the reason I'm mentioning it is not because I like to boast about these things, but because culturally, the pilots are usually the sort of the stubbornest of the people when it comes to converting themselves to things like EVs. They're generally people who like the noise and or quote unquote enjoy the noise of the engines. They just don't know, what they're missing basically. So I thought it's going to be very hard to convince him that an EV is a good alternative. But we'll see when he gets it, obviously.
Of course.
But he was I know the guy for quite a few years, so I know that he was impressed. Like he wasn't just faking it; he was actually genuinely impressed.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Once people have been inside an EV, I think it shatters their preconceptions, and I think I think most people, surely all people, should be really impressed. Yeah. By the power delivery and just how the quietness, the smoothness, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I've got mechanics that are on the road that we live at the moment, and one of them, the main guy, is getting a Tesla. Well, he was getting a Tesla, but actually now he's looking at the Honda E. Anyway, the fact is that he's getting an EV, and the other guys that work there, they all went out in a Tesla Model 3, and they couldn't believe it. And that's the kind of, and also they couldn't believe that I managed to get to John O'Groats in my Kia. They said, "What, in your Kia?" They said they couldn't believe it. So that's the kind of, they're the kind of people that we need to get inside EVs, just so they see what it's all about. Because otherwise they just see smug gits like me creeping along silently, and they just think, "Oh, what an idiot," But once they get inside one, they love them.
I always like to remind people that, because some of us, like you and I mean, I don't know how long you've been driving EVs, but I've been driving an EV now for over 5 years. And to me, they're just like a, not even a normal thing. To me, it's like a no-brainer. But there's still people out there who've never driven one, and who are still, and it's quite the vast majority of the population, at least in the UK, have never even been inside an EV, never mind driving it on their own. So I just always have to remind myself, like, look, you think you're sold and you're way deep in this, but there's people who just never even driven one. So hold your horses.
Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, never mind in your Kia E-Niro. I drove to Edinburgh and back in my 30 kilowatt-hour Leaf, and that was an adventure.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I've never. If I still had the car, I probably would have tried driving it on the Ledjog, but that probably would have taken me a week at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, long before I did it, Chris Ramsey and Jonathan Porterfield did it in a Leaf.
Yes, yeah.
I'm assuming a 24 kilowatt.
Yes,
and
I did.
Yeah. That's a long time ago, isn't it? So they showed what was possible. I think they probably used the Ecotricity network, I imagine, at the time.
They have, and they've been slow charging in places as well, because they just had to do that. Anyway, because I put a pin in the Norfolk trip on purpose, because one thing that people always assume with me, because anyway, not even with me, but once you own a car like Nissan Leaf 30 kilowatt hours, or Nissan Leaf basically with under or around 100-mile range, is that you're not going to go too far, and if you're going to go too far, you're not going to go in your EV. But you've owned now Kia E-Niro for quite a while, so I was quite surprised when you said that you've never been in so many places in the UK, like for instance Scotland. Tell me more about it, and why?
So I don't tend to travel very much, unfortunately. When we do go on holidays, we tend to go to Italy because my wife's Italian, and sadly that means that we haven't really discovered very much of this country, unfortunately. So we've done city breaks in a few places, and we end up going to centre parks in Woburn a lot of the time. But so we haven't really done very many trips, and in fact that was the other thing we were hoping to do this year. We were going to do Snowdonia, we were going to do like Lake District. I mean, we have a whole kind of itinerary planned, but that didn't happen in the end, of course. So I know it's shocking. I know that we don't travel more. And Norfolk, actually, my wife has been to Norfolk. They went camping there and loved it, and I couldn't go at the time. But the plan is, certainly after Brexit, and let's not get political, but after Brexit, I imagine we will be doing far more trips in this country. which is a beautiful country.
You might need a passport for that as well. Because we're in Kent.
To get out of Kent, yeah, God. So I'm looking forward to doing far more trips in it. And, it is so easy, I would say, in the Niro. I mean, I imagine it's pretty easy probably in almost any electric car if it has over a certain range. I would say if you've got sort of around the 200 mile mark, then I wouldn't panic at all. If we do get a Honda E or something like that, then I think I would be a little more careful. Only because you've got to have a plan B and a plan C. I think when you're looking at chargers, the charging network is very good. Our infrastructure is fantastic, really. But on occasion that one is broken, I would start to panic a bit. I think in a small range car.
Well, I don't know. I would have asked you how your trips are in within the UK, but then I discovered that you didn't go anywhere. So as I say, so Dorset, like when we go to Dorset, as I say, we can do that in one leap quite easily, and then I could charge up at mum and dad's place and then come back. So it's sad, isn't it? We're not very adventurous. When we go to Center Parks in Woburn, which is Bedfordshire, that's they've got chargers there. So when we did it in the Leaf, that took 2 charges to get up there, I think. So it's easy. Everything's easier in the Niro. Yeah, I do have to say Norfolk is very nice. I highly recommend visiting, but because of there isn't a sort of a network of dual carriageways, straight roads basically, because it's a wooden area, or there's a lot of woods basically. So there's loads of twisty, bendy roads. We ended up probably driving over 150 miles just around the area for the 3 days that we were there, just to get around, from A to B. We didn't have a destination charger at the cottage that we were staying at, so we just relied fully on public infrastructure, which was brilliant. There's enough chargers around for you to plug yourself in. But obviously, if you can find a place where you can stay at with a destination charger, that's even better.
Norfolk, of course, has the Instavolt hub now, doesn't it, in Necton, in Norfolk?
I've actually never been to that hub.
Well, neither have I, because as you know, I never go anywhere. But I think, I can't remember how many. Was it 12? Was it a hub of 12 Instavolt chargers or something, which is pretty much heaven to me, because I do love my Instavolt.
So do I. But I've never actually, on this trip, we haven't used any Instavolts. We've used... what did we use? We used some obscure networks like Serco, which I've never used before. We have, of course, used the destination charger that I mentioned before, which...
Sorry, is that Serco or Swarco?
Maybe it's Swarco.
Serco, they're the buggers that the government have got doing everything.
Yes, it's Swarco, yeah. It's a similar name.
Okay. It is, yeah.
I'm trying to look up what is the other place called... I can't remember what was the destination charger that we used called. We've used one of the it's not Polar, it's the what do you call the network that something charge something.
Charge your car?
Yeah, charge your car.
Yeah.
One of those chargers, rapid chargers, which wasn't very rapid. And what else did we use? National Trust, where we so that was a pot point that they had, which was very nice of them. So on our last day, we just went for a very long walk, and by the time we got back to the car, it was fully charged. So that was nice.
That's great. Pod point. That's another one I always smile if I see Pod point, because they tend to be quite reliable.
They're very good. You've owned the EV for quite a while, or EVs, I should say, plural, and you've been driving quite a few of them. What do you think are the sort of highlights and the downsides of owning an EV? And in your experience, basically, what were the highlights and any letdowns? Because people always like to hear those.
Yeah, they do. I wish I had some. I'm just trying to think. Okay, so the top positive, I would say, is just the feel of it, or the feeling of driving an EV. I find so much better. I enjoy driving more. I didn't enjoy driving very much before I got an EV. So I've had loads of cars in my time, and actually after a certain point they all started to get a little bit boring. So my favourite car was before I got the Leaf. My favourite car was a Fiat Punto, which I loved because I could throw it around corners and stuff, and it was a fantastic little thing. And a Mazda 323F, which I loved, but all the others have been boring, kind of Ford Focuses, Ford Galaxy, things like that, which does tend to happen when you have a child. But yeah, so top thing is, the moment I got the Leaf, I had a smile on my face the whole time driving around, and I love the fact that it's smooth. I love the fact that you've got the acceleration and all the rest of it. Just feels so much better. Just driving, it just allows you. I think it allows you to be a better driver. That's something I've also noticed, and partly because they are silent. I'm creeping around town, and I always think that someone's going to cross in front of me any moment because they can't hear that. Partly because I turn off this sound because I like it being quiet, but in doing so I feel like, I've got to be a conscientious driver, and I feel I'm a better driver because of it. And just when I'm on the open road, I just feel that it's so, especially with the smart cruise control, I just feel I can take in the sights a little bit more, and it just feels better. It's almost as relaxing as being on a train, I think. So they're the positives for me. Then you've got the other stuff like cost and things like that. And not visiting a petrol station. I mean, I know that's turned into a negative by certain parts of the media, but not visiting a petrol station is a wonderful thing.
It is,
Not having to breathe in the fumes and all that kind of thing. Waking up, going out to your car, and it's charged up in the morning. For those fortunate enough to have home charging, that's a wonderful thing. We need more destination chargers all over the place, so that's the negative, I would say. That it's the charging infrastructure is fantastic, but the reality is so many people cannot charge at home, and they really need to be able to just charge up in a car park. You need to rock up to a car park and plug in, and you shouldn't have to rely, I think, on apps all the time as we do. You shouldn't have to go to a charger depending on where you are in the country, and then have to download another app, all that kind of thing. And the reality is we're going to be stuck with that for a long time with AC chargers, with destination chargers. So even though Rapids will be contactless, we're not going to have that with AC ones, I think, for a long time. So that's, I suppose, I can't think of many other negatives. There is the cost thing, but as I alluded to before, the Leaf was worth more when we sold it than when we bought it. So at the moment, at least, depreciation is not an issue. So that means that when you do buy an EV, if you buy an EV, it will still be worth a lot when you sell it. So, and the cost of running it is less. So I really can't think of very many negatives, unless have you got a good one that I can then just borrow? I
have to agree. So I had now that you've been talking about the apps and all that, I had a conversation with my father-in-law, who's just turned 70 yesterday, actually. And he's a big Mazda fan. He likes Mazdas for some unknown reason to me. I mean, I've never actually driven a Mazda, so
They're nice. I love my 323F. That was a great car, yeah.
But because he's like, so announcement, we pregnant, so we father-in-law is a bit more conscientious about grandkids now.
And big congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, I haven't done it.
You don't
much yet.
Yeah. You've got the easy job,
yeah. So far, well.
Yeah.
Let me not get into that.
No,
but he one of his kind of ideas for 70th was to get a new car, and he looked at the new Mazda. Is it CX-30? I think that's what it's called. The electric.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah.
And he was very much disappointed by the range on that. But I had a conversation with him about because your typical conversation, again going back to the fact that he's never actually driven an EV before. He's been in my cars multiple times as a passenger, but he never been brave enough to sit behind the wheel. And he's not a sport driving guy. He's he's not a slouch by any means. But anyway, he didn't quite enjoy the fact that the however much it costs, it doesn't do more than, was it 150 miles? I can't remember what the range is, but I would have to look it up. But it's not impressive, shall we say. And I was trying to explain to him that most people don't drive more than 60, 70 miles a day anyway. And when you plug in the car at home, it's always fully charged in the morning when you leave or whenever you need it. And I think that's it's, we're saying it as if it's a fact, because it is, but that shift people can't think of that way. Like their thinking is, okay, well, I go to a petrol station, I pop in some fuel, and the car says 400 miles. I want the same thing, right? That's their thinking. And of course, that's different than when you're on a longer trip. And this is where when you said about the apps, I was like kind of thinking, like, I mean, both of my in-laws actually use mobile phones, but they have like very old Android phones that serve them as phones and WhatsApp devices more than actual smart computer, basically, or smart pocket computer. So I think people like that would struggle with having to download. You rock up like I did on my trip to Norfolk. I've never been by a Serco charger. Is it or Swarco, or whatever it's called? Swarco.
Swarco.
Apologies to people from Swarco who probably follow me on Twitter. Apologies again. But it was a very lovely charger. Don't get me wrong. But I had to download a new app. Actually, I had to find it. I had to download it. It wasn't easy. Some of the chargers have a nice QR code that you can just scan. But again, trying to explain what a QR code is to an elderly person who's not like super computer savvy, it's a different story. So that kind of annoys me. And the fact that I think there's going to be more and more EVs now coming out that are going to be sub 200 mile range, and because people haven't made that paradigm shift in their head, the way they think about driving, they're going to be they're not going to be persuaded by them. Everyone's kind of expecting that the next great EV is going to have 400 plus mile range. That's everyone's been promised that, and I think that's the downside of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
This turned more into a rant than.
So it's funny actually. So firstly, it's the MX-30. Sorry. Not the CX. And it's 124 miles. I'm just looking up the stats. It's 124 miles of range, WLTP. So if you think that's it's going to be far less than that. I mean, you're going to get 70 on the motorway or something with that Mazda.
It depends on how efficient the powertrain is, but because it could be Kia efficient, in which case you could actually get 120 miles or 110, but it could be Nissan efficient, in which case you're going to get 60 or 70. So
I think given Mazda have been pretty slow to do anything, I'm going to say that it's not going to be very efficient. I think this is a compliant car. I think the Mazda. I think, having said that, I actually quite like the look of it, even though it's got a ridiculously long bonnet, which it really bothers me because there's no reason for that. I don't like long bonnet cars, I don't like, when you're creeping up to a junction, you can barely see around it. You don't want to be driving into the road to see if anyone's coming.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little mini rantet. It's funny actually because someone contacted me the other day and they were asking for advice. They had just got a Kona. I think they live in Kent actually. So they live in Kent, and they were picking this up country, and it was quite a big journey, and they don't have a smartphone. So that is, that's an interesting thing because we're so used to saying, I'll just rock up to a charger, use your app, blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be just that you use contactless. So I told them, as it is, I told them to go to Milton Keynes Coachway and use the Polar chargers there because they're contactless. But because this person, they've got an adventurous spirit, I guess, and I think you need that when you're getting an EV. They tried the Ionity chargers, and actually it was on free vend, so they got a free charge. So that's great. But there is an interesting thing, isn't it? Also, all chargers really should be contactless.
They do, yeah. And not for a premium, not double the price like some do. I actually, talking about this kind of reminded me that because the EV meetups, we used to go to these things where people would meet up and talk about their electric cars. I went to the Hull, the town called Hull, and for the Yorkshire EV.
For the Yorkshire, yeah, you were saying that in your last podcast, weren't you?
Yeah, and very lovely people, and there were quite a few people with who were brand new EV owners, but there were a few other people who just live sort of semi-local, and they, everything they need to reach is within 50, 60 miles range. And quite a few of those people were actually saying to me that actually they don't have any apps or any cards for any charging network because they never have to use them. So the people like that absolutely exist who actually, and I'm absolutely certain that there are loads of people in this country that because they have 2 or 3 cars and their second commuter car or school run car doesn't have to be a petrol or diesel car and could be charged at home, and they absolutely don't need even to think about the EV charging infrastructure, which, when I had my Nissan Leaf 5 years ago, there was nothing like what we have now, and I was fine driving up to Edinburgh, then Glasgow, and then via Lake District going back home to Tunbridge. I was absolutely... I wasn't Tunbridge, actually. I lived in London at the time, but not much of a difference in southeast London. And I, again, I'm an adventurous spirit. I'm happy to go where no other man has gone before. No, just joking. Like, nothing that I've done was terribly adventurous, but it was adventurous nonetheless to like a common folk, to people who are playing it safe, basically. And where I was going with this is I still think that there's more than enough people who should get an EV as their first car. In fact, actually, I've sold my Nissan Leaf to such a person. It's their school run car, and I don't think they're ever going to go on a journey as far as I went in that car. Because I think that's all they need.
Yeah, and second cars, I think that's where they really come into their own. I think that's like the Trojan horse, really. You would get your second car would be an EV, and you realise that you actually end up using that one more than the main car. And then at that point, you would think about getting fully electric, because it is it's addictive. I think once you start charging at home, it's almost like a gamification kind of thing that EVs have. That you want to be as efficient as possible, and you want to get the energy as cheap as possible. And someone on a video recently was telling me, are all EV owners really tight? Because you all seem to be obsessed with saving money. And I kind of responded, that's a good thing, isn't it? To use less energy and things, surely that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's the fun. I think that's where a lot of the fun of EV ownership comes, because when you have a fossil car, I don't think I never paid attention to the cost of fuel. It was just, you had to go to a petrol station whether you like it or not.
Indeed.
And you just happened to go to the one that you needed to go to. So I love the fact that we're so obsessed with these little details and things, and it makes it fun. And I think that is all part of the adventurous spirit. I think the people that don't want an EV at the moment are the ones that are scared, primarily. I think that's all it comes down to with everything that's bad in the world, is people being scared for no reason. And I think the moment someone dips their toe in the water, they'll wonder why they ever worried.
Indeed.
And
that's
the way it is.
That's a very happy note to end on, maybe. Because we're running out of time, sadly. As much as I would love to talk to you for much longer, I need to be.
We'll do another one sometime, of course.
I'll be happy to do it. So yeah, no worries.
Great. Well, yes, we're wonderful chatting, and if everyone should listen to your previous podcast. I listened to that the other day, and you went on a long. Well, that was a long, waffly podcast, but it was fascinating, and talking about selling the Leaf and all that kind of thing. It was brilliant.
As much as I like to have guests on and interview people, I do have to sometimes get it off my chest, and I always thought that it's a bad thing, but I have quite a few listeners that I've met at EV meetups and who actually enjoy the fact that I can waffle on about something, and they actually like me talking. And that's what it's all about, right?
It is what it's
I'm
all
not doing
about.
this to have millions of listeners, but if somebody's enjoying me yapping away, I'm happy. So
exactly, and I think that's the best reason to do it. I think, yeah. Exactly.
Anyway, thank you for your time, and when we get a chance, we should meet up in person, because my kind of plan in my head was that we could meet up in person actually, and I could record this in doing it face to face, but obviously.
It wouldn't sound good with masks, would it?
No.
It'd be a bit muffled.
That's good point.
But yes, we'll do a meetup, definitely.
All right.
One of these days. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew, for your time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Well, all that's left for me to do is thank you, Andrew, for appearing on Take It EV. Thank you guys for listening. As always, share, subscribe, and if you have any comments or questions, at Take It EV on Twitter. takeitev@gmail.com is my email address, and hope you're all well. See yous.
Take it EV.
Take it EV.